All right, so we're diving into some pretty thought-provoking stuff today, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Should be interesting.
We've been digging into Victor Davis Hansen's work, and, well, he's known for his bold takes on things, right?
Yeah. No holding back with him.
We're focusing on his conversation. It's called The Emperor's New Clothes for Grown-Ups. And, well, the title kind of gives you a hint. There's some sharp critique in there. Ready to unpack it?
I'm all for it. Let's see what he's got to say.
One of the things that really struck me right off the bat was this image he paints of America as this, deeply divided nation. He even uses this visual, right? Talking about a 900-mile liberal corridor versus this 50-mile conservative stretch.
Oh, I see where you're going with that.
It's like he's taken all that tension we hear about constantly and just put it right there on a map, you know?
It's a powerful image, for sure. And I think gets right to the heart of what Hansen's trying to say. It's this feeling that there are these, two Americas, and they're becoming more and more divided, both geographically and in terms of their values.
It's not just about where you live, right? It's about what you believe.
Absolutely. You think about the coasts versus the heartland. The coasts, they're often seen as these centers of liberalism, right? Focused on social issues, taking a global perspective on things. But then you have the heartland, and it's often associated with more traditional values, more focus on local communities. And there's definitely a skepticism, even a distrust of what's perceived as elitism.
Which brings me to another one of Hansen's points that I found really, well, provocative to say the least, this idea of the lab rats.
Yeah, he definitely uses some strong language there.
I mean, you don't often hear people described that way, do you?
No, not really. And I think it's intentional. He wants to shake people up a bit.
So help me understand this. Who are these lab rats he's talking about?
Just imagine for a second, you're a single parent, right? Working 2 jobs just to put food on the table. You're struggling, trying to make ends meet, and then you see these politicians, these supposed experts, enacting all these policies that seem totally out of touch with your daily struggles. Policies that feel more like experiments than actual solutions.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
It's that feeling of being overlooked, even spoken down to. Like you're being experimented on by people who don't have to live with the consequences.
And that ties into what he calls the hypocrisy of the elite, doesn't it?
Exactly. He doesn't hold back on that critique either. He points to all sorts of examples. Think about some environmentalists, right? They talk a big game about climate change, but their own carbon footprints are enormous.
I was just talking to someone about this. This guy, he's a contractor, works with his hands, builds things for a living. And he was saying how frustrating it is to hear these lectures on climate change from people who've never, even mowed their own lawn, you know?
Right, exactly. It's this disconnect between what people say and what they actually do.
Or think about this whole defund the police movement.
Oh, yeah. He brings that up, too.
And a lot of the people pushing for that, they live in these gated communities, right? Far removed from the realities of high crime neighborhoods.
It's that disconnect again, right?
Yeah.
They're not the ones living with the consequences of their own policies.
And this disconnect, this hypocrisy he's talking about, it's not just in politics either, right? He also brings up education, specifically higher education.
Absolutely. Hansen is really concerned about what he sees happening in universities, especially these elite institutions. He argues that they've become so focused on certain ideological narratives that they're neglecting practical skills.
So it's like they're more worried about being politically correct than actually preparing students for the real world.
Exactly. And he's not saying that those narratives aren't important. It's more that he sees a real danger in neglecting the kind of education that actually equips people for the workforce. Those practical skills you need to succeed, to get a job, build a career, support a family.
Especially for students who don't come from privileged backgrounds.
Exactly. He argues that this focus on a narrow set of ideas, combined with this neglect of practical skills, it just widens the gap between the haves and the have-nots. It's like the system is rigged against them from the start.
It's a pretty sobering picture he paints.
It is.
But he does offer a glimmer of hope.
He does. He sees a potential path forward in what he calls a resurgence of common sense.
Oh, okay. Tell me more about that.
So he believes that more and more people are starting to see through what they perceive as this elitist hypocrisy. They're returning to a valuing of practical skills, of hard work, of personal responsibility.
It's about getting back to basics in a way.
Yeah, kind of. It's about recognizing that there are these fundamental values that have always made America strong.
Yeah.
And that we need to get back to them.
And he ties this back to that Latin phrase he uses, sic transit gloria. I have to admit, I had to look that one up.
It basically means, thus passes the glory of the world. Or, to put it more simply, fame is fleeting.
So why do you think he brings that up? What's the connection there?
I think it's a reminder that power is always temporary. What's popular today might be ridiculed tomorrow. He seems to be suggesting that real, lasting change comes from the ground up. It comes from people embracing those values he was talking about. Common sense, practical solutions, hard work, personal responsibility.
So if you had to sum up Hansen's message in just a couple of sentences, what would you say?
Hmm, that's a tough one. I think at its core, it's a call for a reality check.
A reality check.
Yeah. Like a wake-up call.
Well,
A reminder that the world is complex, and there's a real danger in embracing simplistic solutions, especially when those solutions are being imposed from above by people who are disconnected from the realities they're trying to shape.
my biggest takeaway from all of this is that we need to listen to each other more,
I agree with that.
especially to people who are different from us, who come from different backgrounds, who have different experiences.
So easy to just stay in our own little bubbles,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. We surround ourselves with people who already agree with us, and then we wonder why things are so divided. Maybe the real challenge is breaking out of those echo chambers and actually engaging with different perspectives, even if they make us uncomfortable. It's like Hansen is saying that in many ways, common sense and practical skills are undervalued these days, maybe even dismissed, especially in certain circles. So, what do you think the implications of that are? And what can we do to bridge that divide to make sure everyone has a real shot at success, no matter their background or their beliefs?